Welcome to ENG 328, Study Session 14. Niyi Oshundare, Social Commitment, Introduction. In this study session, you will explore the contributions of Niyi Oshundare, a Nigerian, to the works of poetry. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to distinguish between the poetry of Niyi Oshundare and the generation before him, particular at the level of comprehension and simplicity. 2. Identify themes in Oshundare's poetry. About Niyi Oshundare. Niyi Oshundare was born in a Yoruba family in Ikere-Ekiti State, Nigeria. He was educated at Ibadan, Leeds, and Canada, respectively. Among his works, we have Songs of the Market Place, 1986, The Eye of the Earth, 1986, Moon Songs, 1988, Waiting Laughters, 1990, Songs of the Season, 1990, and Selected, 1992. He also published a critical commentary, The Writer as Writer, 1986, and Village Voices, 1984. In this study session, you will learn about his works. Review of Oshundare's poetry. The purposes of Oshundare's poetry are plain in his volume, Songs of Marketplace, in which he devotes his poetic energies to the service of the exploited African peasantry. In the first poem, he asserts his artistic vision in conjunction with his populist theme of social obligation. To Oshundare, poetry is not the esoteric whisper of an excluding tongue, not a claptrap for a wounding audience, not a learned quiz entombed in Greco-Roman lore. Poetry is a life spring which gathers timber. The more throats it plucks, a binger of action, the more minds it tears. The reference to Greco-Roman lore is crucial to Oshundare's poetic, for through it indicates the uses to which the pre-Civil War generation of poets such as Soyinka and Okigbo put their post-colonial education inheritance. These poets, according to Oshundare, brought the old mechanistic apparatuses of European poetry. The modernists' pretension to African soil, that was why Soyinka was difficult, and Okigbo too. 1985-4. In the poet, from a nib in the poem, Oshundare extends his populist theories about the function of poetry to include the role of the poet, who is not a prophet, God-hollow ventriloquists, arguing past futures in dated tongues. The poet's eyes are washed in the common spring, through seeding beyond the lazy horizon of lowering skies, who says the poets should leave the muck unracked. In a land of choking mud, how can the poet trot clean in feathered sandals and pretend to the world he never smells? Though he excludes obscurity and arcane language of the pre-Civil War poets, Oshundare has in common with his peers, including most of those of the first generation, a political dimension to his writing that makes it potentially revolutionary and transformative. Oshundare strives with the problem of the masses and dissociating it from the socio-economic processes that make it illicit. He does this by drawing on the oral tradition of his agrarian roots. In the stories, songs, moods, and tones, he finds a model for making his poetry accessible to the oppressed people in Nigerian society who are victims of self-serving political and economic leadership. Note compare. I could not choose but serve. I took their measure in the depth of sea beds. Gallery slave to claims of bread and coal. I brought the enemy fleet to port and pressed a risen course of temperate victory. It did not suffice, I pledged reversion of any strength to arbitrary, the pledged extinction of their kind. Wole Soyinka, A Shuttle in the Crypt. The politician's mouth has two edges. Like a Simuda's sword, it is murders both ways. When the man of power tell you his tale, ask him to wait till you bring a sieve. Osundaro, Village Voices. Osundaro's poetry combines the meditative with the rhetorical and displays a wide range of topics. European cultural influence and poetry, as well as the abstractions of love, pride, humility, honesty, cowardice, mystery, and corruption. His mood and lyrical, celebratory, ironical, satirical, humorous, bitter, are equally various as he exposes corruption in Nigeria society. In Village Voices, 1984, Osundare portrays the activities, concerns, and attitudes of peasants. For example, in Eating Tomorrow's Yam, he details the concerns of farmers in The Prisoner's Song. He convincingly portrays the bluster of a prisoner, and in Alarika, he captures the listlessness of a vagabond. He also projects a clear revolutionary proletarian vision. Here, Osundaro portrays the hypocrisy of Nigerian politicians. To Osundare, they do not have anything good to offer the masses. What concerns them is grabbing with both hands. In A Nip in the Pond, 1986, he continues with his thematic concern in Song of the Marketplace. No need hiding in the tabernacle of words, so the storm of hunger. No need camouflaging behind a flimsy jungle of occult idioms. There is no pet name for injustice. Poverty has no bank for nicknames. In The Eye of the Earth, 1986, Osundare affirms the origins of rural oral societies of his poetic materials. Farmer-born peasants bred, it encountered dawn in the enchanted corridors of the forest, suckled on the delicate aroma of healing herbs and the pearly drops of generous moons. Living in those days was rugged, but barns brimmed with yams fattened by merciful rains and the tempering fall of the upland sun. Earth was ours, and we earth's. The poem represents a vision of a dying earth, proceeding from the acts of the rich and ruthless who squander art's wealth on the invention of increasingly accomplished weapons of death, while millions of people perish daily from avoidable hunger. 1986. Waiting Laughters, 1990, is, as Osundare says in the subtitle, a long song in many voices. The song has 4 movements that all relate to the theme implied in the title, waiting and humor. Osundare draws his theme for the most part from Nigeria, specifically from his Yoruba inheritance, but there are poems that relate to other parts of Africa and the Black World, such as Thomas Sankara, Nelson Mandela, Steve Biko, and Walter Rodney. These poems contain an excitement an exuberance that propels them forward, often as a string of images, and suggests the impatience inherent in waiting, with a playfulness in the use of language. What happens to the song which waits too long? In the labyrinths of the troth, what happens to the prayer which waits too long, without an amen? What happens to the faces which wait too long, without the memory of a mask? What happens to laughter which waits too long in the compost of anguished seasons? What? Oshundare has produced a volumes of poetry with a sweetness and mellowness virtually unparalleled in African poetry to date, and a rhythmic beat which compares well with that of Kofi Anjidoho, whose work we shall examine in the next session. Study session summary. Oshundare returned to the tradition of African poetry that uses poetry as song in order to chastise wrongdoers and create a fair and just society. His poetry is unique by its lyricism together with an insistently dramatic manner derived from the African oral tradition. His poetry is best appreciated in performance and within the larger context of oral poetry. This is the end of study session 14. Thanks for listening.